put USDA Trapper.
All right. Once again, good morning, everyone. I am Bonnie Abramson. I'm the education coordinator for the United Square Dancers of America, and I oversee these United Square Dancers of America Beyond the Dance Floor webinar series. All of our programs are recorded, so early next week, it will be posted to the USDA website, and you'll be able to view the recording if you have people that have missed it or you'll be interested at a future time. I am pleased this morning. Oh, we're going to ask everyone, please post your questions in the chat. And then as there is a break in the conversation, I can pass those on to our two presenters so that we can get them all addressed in a timely manner. Please, once I mute you, please keep yourself muted unless you're called upon. At the end of the program, if we have time for questions and answers, which we should, please wait to be acknowledged before you unmute yourself. This just helps keep our recordings nice and clean and clear. It is my pleasure this morning to have Mr. Jim Masco, who is our group exemption co-administrator with the applications for the 501c3 nonprofit group exemption program. We also have with us Jim and Judy Taylor, who are the USDA treasurers. Jim Taylor has gotten very involved in this program over the last couple of years, and so we're glad to have him as part of this program. Unfortunately, Pat Inglis has not joined us yet. She is the co-administrator and she handles all the renewals. So ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Jim Masco and Jim Taylor talking about USDA's 501c3 nonprofit group exemption program.
Good morning. Thank you, Bonnie. We appreciate Jim and Judy Taylor joining the presentation. Generally speaking, the nonprofit status consists of like three basic groups: a 501c7, which is for social organizations, 501c4, social welfare organizations, and 501c3, which is charitable educational organizations. Over the years, it seems as though the IRS has pigeonholed square dance groups into the 501c7 nonprofit category. But this is absolutely not where square dance groups belong. The 501c7 category is for closed membership groups, similar to country clubs. Any income from non-members or guests, as we square dancers like to call them, would be taxable. So if a dancer from another area comes to your dance or another club, attends your dance and pays your admission fee, that income to your group becomes taxable. And so 501c7 is just not the best place for square dance clubs or groups in general to be. We don't want to pay taxes if we don't have to. And as a nonprofit, we shouldn't have to. From its inception in 1981 until 2011, the United Square Dancers of America operated as a IRS 501c4 nonprofit social welfare organization, which is a very beneficial category, but just not as beneficial as the 501c3. USDA's extensive library of educational materials and its youth scholarship program readily qualified USDA for the more beneficial 501c3 nonprofit status. So in June of 2009, US began the painful process of dealing directly with the IRS and submitted its initial application to the IRS to change from a 501c4 to a 501c7. USDA's initial application was denied due to the lack of a dissolution clause within the USDA bylaws. This is an important factor. All groups seeking nonprofit status must have a dissolution clause within your governing documents. It doesn't have to be bylaws. It can be a constitution or other document that you use within your club. So during the 2010 annual meeting of USDA, the bylaws were amended to incorporate the appropriate dissolution clause. The USDA's application was submitted for a second time in 2010 and was again met with resistance from the IRS, who requested additional information. As a side note, it seems as though the IRS policy is to deny nonprofit applications on their first submission. This was also true when we were working to obtain 501c3 status for the Arts Dance, the Alliance of Round, Traditional, and Square Dance. In addition, in the Florida Federation, who's a member of USDA, submitted their application for 501c3 status directly to the IRS. They were denied, even though, in my opinion, their governing documents were in compliance with all of the IRS criteria. Perhaps the application reviewed by the wrong IRS agent. To ensure success of the USDA's application for 501c3 status, USDA turned to legal counsel for assistance, an expensive $3,000 and time-consuming process. Finally, in November of 2011, USDA was recognized as a 501c3 nonprofit by the IRS. As an organization that prides itself on being a service organization, in 2012, USDA's Board of Directors authorized the USDA Executive Committee to initiate the process to become a nonprofit group exemption program administrator, which included approval by the USDA Board of Directors to pay the IRS the $3,000 group exemption application fee. Again, this was a time-consuming process, and initially being denied by well, actually just a time-consuming process. Finally, with the USDA affiliates supporting, with 3 of the USDA affiliates supporting the USDA's group exemption, the application was submitted in December of 2018. Shortly after that, the government shut down in early 2019, and after some additional prodding from the USDA President Tony and Diana Rock at the time, the application was finally approved by the IRS in December of 2019. By this time, fortunately, somehow the IRS had reduced their application fee from $3,000 to $2,000. So we did manage to save $1,000 there. The benefits of nonprofit status: you're relieved of filing separate individual 501c3 nonprofit applications. You're exempt from federal income tax and relieved from paying state and corporate income taxes, and eligible to receive private foundation grants. And it's simply easier to obtain 501c3 nonprofit status through the USDA group exemption program than directly through the IRS. As previously indicated, square dance groups that have previously applied directly to the IRS have been denied, even though they are fully qualified. 501c3 status relieves the group of paying taxes, eligible to receive grants, and qualified to receive tax-deductible bequests from transfers from individuals and organizations. As we've again able to receive corporate donations, corporations are able to give you, like if you're having a special dance, you could ask for someone to give you a TV and you could raffle it off, and that business could write it off as a business expense. And contributors may deduct donations from their income taxes and potential to rent facilities at below market rates. And this is something that more and more groups are finding is actually working for them, and eligible for lower postal rates and entitled to public service announcements. All in all, these things add up quite a bit of money over the course of time. Additional benefits are officers and committee chairs are eligible to deduct their out-of-pocket expenses when serving the nonprofit entity. So when you're traveling to your state meeting or something on that order, your expenses are actually tax deductible on your personal income tax. Once a group is recognized as a nonprofit, that designation remains with them as long as they maintain active membership in the USDA and complies with all their own governing documents that must actually detail that they follow procedures to conform to IRS regulations. It is often noted that organizations recognized as 501c3, that organization achieves more legitimacy and becomes more credible in the eyes of the public and other entities. Groups that are affiliated members with USDA may obtain 501c3 nonprofit status without having to deal with the hassle of working directly with the IRS, and may apply for nonprofit status through the United States of America's nonprofit group exemption program. Affiliate groups include the 56 direct affiliates, generally state organizations that belong to USDA, that are made up of areas, regional associations, councils that are organized with bylaws and governing documents. A nonprofit organization larger than a club, representing square, round, concert, fog, line, or heritage dancers, inclusive from a defined geographical location in the United States of America. This is a definition from the USDA glossary. It goes on to state that which are subscribed to the USDA application procedures for the affiliate membership, which includes the applicant organization's agreement to abide by the bylaws and standing rules of the United States of America, as well as the USDA Code of Ethics and Code of Conduct. and has been accepted with full rights and duties. In addition, since 2020, local groups that are members of one of the USDA direct affiliates are also eligible for membership in USDA as associates and eligible for the 501c3 group exemption program. This would include local, area, and regional associations, councils, and clubs, and have the ability to apply to the IRS for associate membership. Again, the definition of associate membership is a nonprofit organization, group of any size made up of dancers, clubs, associations, councils, or districts representing square, round, or contra, and from within the United States. They're also members of the USDA affiliate organization. They have subscribed to the USDA or application procedures for associate membership, which includes the applicant organization's agreement to abide by the bylaws and standing rules of the USDA, as well as complying with the USDA Code of Ethics and Code of Conduct, and have been accepted within the limited rights and privileges prescribed within the USDA bylaws and standing rules. An associate member does not have voting rights within the USDA's annual meeting. So it gets about everything else, but you don't have a voice in the operation of USDA. Qualifications and requirements for nonprofit status of USDA. In addition to being a member of USDA, applicants for 501c3 group exemption status must still follow all the criteria established by the IRS for nonprofit status. The group's governing documents must include a number of commitments. The applicant's organizational documents must include the statement that they are organized exclusively for charitable, educational, or scientific purposes, including for such purposes the making of distributions to organizations that qualify under 501c3 of the Internal Revenue Code or the corresponding section of any future federal code. They must agree to adhere to the USDA's bylaws and standing rules, agree to subscribe to the USDA's Code of Ethics and Code of Conduct, and you must include a dissolution clause stating that upon a majority vote of the board of directors to dissolve the corporation or the group, the executive committee or the organizational officers shall, after paying or making provision for the payment of all the liabilities of the group, dispose of all the assets of the corporation exclusively for the benefit of the corporation to any exempt group or entity organized for purposes similar to those set forth under Section 501c3 of the Internal Revenue Code of 1986 or corresponding provisions of any future U.S. Internal Revenue law. The group's fiscal year must coincide with the USDA fiscal year, January 1st to December 31st. Most of these things are painless. They're not all that difficult. It's just that the group's bylaws may need to be amended or modified to mention these things and comply. Groups that desire to obtain 501c3 nonprofit status through the USDA Nonprofit Group Exemption Program may visit the USDA website, usda.org, and obtain the various instructions and forms to apply for nonprofit status. For those of you who will post your email addresses in the chat, we will send you a package that includes the documents and a brief overview. So we'll try to expedite things a little bit there by sending you what you need rather than having you go search for it. So just put your email address in the chat and we'll get that information to you almost immediately. For those organizations that are not currently USDA affiliates, the forms include an application for affiliate or associate membership. The procedures for conforming to the group exemption program procedures and requirements is also provided. And these are some of the forms. The application for affiliate membership, pretty straightforward, just identify who the officers are and agree to abide by the USDA rules. And then there's application for associate membership or the previous one was the affiliate membership. These things are all pretty much self-explanatory. And then we ask that generally that you submit your application for membership through your regional vice president. We've been somewhat negligent in doing that, and in effort of expediting things, we've been having the membership application, the 501c3 application, submitted directly to the group exemption administrators, myself, Jim Masco, at this point, and I distribute it to the vice presidents and they deal with it. The vice president of USDA, along with the USDA president, by the membership committee, and they review the various documents to make sure that they comply with the USDA criteria, and that all is dealt with and processed, and we review your application to make sure it's in compliance. And our policy is you submit your bylaws and governing documents to us. We review them to make sure that they do have the dissolution clause and identify the fiscal year and would be acceptable as 501c3 before we even ask that you submit your $100, your one-time $100 application fee. We're here as a service organization to make sure you succeed. We're not going to take your money without giving you the reward you're looking for, the 501c3 status. We're going to work with you to get your documents in order so that you will comply and will be able to become a 501c3. So there's no out-of-pocket expense ahead of time. We're making sure that you do actually qualify for 501c3. There's a cover letter that we ask that you complete. Actually, the IRS, this is one of the IRS's requirements that we must have on hand to validate that you have chosen to be a participant in the group exemption program. And then the group exemption applications themselves, a little more tedious. We ask for the very same information that the IRS would ask for, but we try to do it in a friendlier manner. And again, you submit these documents to us before you ever send us any money. We're not trying to rob anybody or take your money from your hardworking sport dance groups. We want to make sure you're going to succeed before we actually move forward. So again, it's basically a 3-page application for the 501c3. We do ask for some financial information and for the previous fiscal year, January 1st to December 31st, or if an organization is in the process of changing from like a August 1st to July 31st calendar year, we'll take the most recently completed fiscal year for the organization. And this is a summary of the costs. An affiliate membership annual dues are anywhere from $25 to $100. That's based on whether a state organization typically has 4 votes at USDA and they pay $100. A regional organization could have just 1 vote and they would pay $25. And for everyone, the initial application fee for nonprofit status is $100. And the annual renewal fee of $50 is just for the first 2 years. This is something that we've chosen to waive after 2 years. USDA is a service organization. We're not trying to make this a profit center. We're just using this as a means of further providing the services to the square dance community. But one essential thing is each year as a exempt organization, you are required to file a financial report with the USDA and to file your 990s or 990EZ and directly with the IRS. And on these forms, you use your group's employer identification number. This is something maybe I neglected to emphasize earlier. Each group must have its independent EIN or employer identification number. Granted, generally, we as square dance groups do not employ anybody, but that's how the IRS identifies any organization. And the banks now like to have or insist generally that you have an EIN to have a bank account. So this is all essential for operating these days in the square dance community or almost within any entity. So, and obtaining an EIN is really quite simple. It can be done online with the IRS and be done online. You'll have your number almost instantly. We've covered quite a bit of ground, and if you have any questions, we're happy to answer them at this time. Maybe just escape from this and go back to the Zoom and go ahead.
I have no questions currently posted in the chat. I do have some addresses that I'll save for you.
Good. Oh. Pat, can you tell us where you're from? Pat Ho? need to unmute yourself, please, Pat. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm from the Stanford Quads in Northern California.
Okay, great. Well, we're pleased to have the group with us this morning, and as has been mentioned, the session will be recorded and is available on the USDA website. Happy to answer any questions if we've generated any questions, or if we've answered them all, then we did our job. But if we have any questions, we're certainly happy to work with you and give them. The very best way to communicate with me is via email. If you'll email me a question, I will email it back an answer. So telephones, I don't seem to keep up with very well. So emailing me works the very best.
Jim,
Helen,
what email address do you want them to use?
Well, there's a group exemption email address on the web. I think there's a couple of. You go to the USDA website, that gives you my email address, my email addresses, and you can submit an email question. And that goes for you too, Helen, even though you have your hand up, you have to send it to me by email. I'm not speaking to you.
Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, I was just going to acknowledge you, Helen.
Okay. Actually, my name is Helen Bragg. I'm from the Wrangler Square Dance Group in San Diego. And a couple of years ago, we did obtain the 501c3 status, but we did that independently, directly to the IRS, not through the group exemption program. So the reason for my tuning in today was to kind of get a little bit better educated on what the advantages are to being a 501c3. And my question to Jim is that I saw on the slide that told about some of the advantages. It mentioned about corporate donations, about public service announcements, that type of thing. Is that the same for all 501c3s, whether you are under the group exemption program or you did it directly to the IRS?
It's the same. If you're a 501c3 for USDA, it's no different than a 501c3 that was obtained directly from the IRS. The USDA will issue each group an award letter, as we call it, identifying you as a 501c3. You got a similar document from the IRS, but ours has some numbers on it that you can use to identify your group as a 501c3, and it's a legitimate document that any business would be happy to.
Okay, then my questions have to do with how to exercise these benefits, take advantage of them. For instance, I was aware of the corporate sponsorship or corporate donations. I don't know exactly how to go about doing that, but I was not aware of the eligibility for public service announcements. Have any square dance groups taken advantage of that, and how did they go about doing that?
Well, I mean, kind of up to the media entity that you're dealing with is how they deal with it. I mean, I haven't done it personally, so I don't know that I have a good answer.
Your best bet on that is to reach out to your local radio and TV stations and ask what their policy is. Many of them want a large amount of time leading up to, like they might ask for 6 weeks advance notice kind of thing. Also check with your public television stations in your area. And again, often they will post your announcements at no charge. But again, you need to check with them to find out what their individual policies are. Same with your local newspapers. Jim, I have a couple of questions that did come.
Yeah, I see Rosie's question, and how do you want to know if you want to be an affiliate or an associate?
Okay.
Generally, Rosie, your club would want to be an associate member. You belong to the Wisconsin state organization in some manner, and they are the affiliate representing Wisconsin. And so you would be an associate, and the paperwork would be the same for either an affiliate or an associate. And I thought that I'd gotten those to you, Rosie, but I know you and I have communicated. But, you're muted at the moment, Rosie. If you want to talk, unmute yourself and speak up. There you go.
I have those papers and I couldn't do the 990, so I decided to listen to this
Okay.
webinar before I
Right.
did
And
anything.
if you were not previously an exempt organization, maybe I'm gonna have Jim Taylor kind of chime in and help with, if you weren't an exempt organization, you didn't need to do a 990, but once you become an exempt organization, you do. Jim, can you kind of amplify on that, please? Maybe he left a meeting.
No, he
Right.
just needs to unmute.
Well,
Did it? How about that?
You're good.
that's better.
Okay. Most all of our clubs, social clubs, and the square dance clubs and organizations should be identified with the IRS as an exempt organization, because if you're not identified as an exempt organization, you have the potential issue of needing to pay taxes on your income, or to file a business Schedule C return so that you can deduct the expenses. So, but that's an awkward problem, and you don't really want to deal with it. It's much easier to be an exempt. An exempt with the IRS is a C4 or 3 or 7. They're all exempt. And that allows you to have a $1,000 tax exemption. Well, the IRS back in 2014 or 16, somewhere around there, decided that they needed to know that all of the exempt organizations out there, actually, whether they existed or not. So they created a law, I guess, that said every exempt organization needs to file a 990. And if you don't file it, you will lose your exemption. And that's how I got involved with this program, is because we were making organizations a 501c3, and they would go to file their 990N, and they would not be able to do it because they weren't exempt. Well, there were numerous reasons why that occurred. One of which was that the IRS was so short-handed that they were as much as 2 years behind in posting anything. And so if you were not an exempt organization and had kept up with if you in fact had kept up with your 990s or a 990N all this time up until you applied for a 501c3, you were fine if you've done that. But if you had not done that, you would have lost your exemption 3 years, after 3 years of failing to do it. And that put you in the into another category, and you can't file a 990N unless you are in fact currently exempt. So that's how I got involved. And if you'll look in the chat, I posted an IRS address, and on that page you can scan down and you can search for your EIN, and it will come back and tell you that it doesn't exist, or that it is in the regular file, or that it is in the file of having been taken out of the regular file, meaning you're not exempt anymore. But they know that you were, and they put you in a status of having been removed. I'm coming up with I can't come up with the right word now. what they call it. But anyway, you've been your status has been rescinded. So that particular search comes up with all of the information that is available on 4 different forms that you can go out there. There are databases that are out on the IRS website, and you can go, anybody can go look them up. And so that's what I did for a while until I finally realized that this particular address that I've put in the chat is a place where I pretty much get an answer. So if it doesn't come up with anything, then that means that you just don't have an exempt status. You were not identified as an exempt status. And there are reasons for you to do that. And someone has just brought up that they just filed, just restored their status. And you can do that. You can get a hold of the IRS and actually talk to someone, and they will go through the process of restoring it. And there's one link in there to tell you how to restore it. If you have been exempt in any particular status, of a 4 or a 3 or 7, and the fact that you have applied through the USDA to become a 501c3, hopefully it is true that when Jim files that with the IRS, they will just find your EIN and correct it and change it to a 501c3, and you'll be in there. And once that's done, you should then be able to file the 990N. And I suggest everybody file the 990N, because the only reason you wouldn't do that is if you regularly have more than $50,000 of income, gross income, no expenses identified, just gross income of $50,000. We had another organization that received a $100,000 bequeathment, but that was just one time, 1 year, and that average is over 4 years. And averaging out that $100,000 and our $10,000 normal yearly deal came up to less than $50,000. So we didn't do it. And the 990N, when the IRS created the need to do exemptions, to see all of the names of all the exempt organizations and whether or not they still exist, decided that we'd make it real easy for everybody, because the IRS didn't need hundreds of thousands of more forms being filed and them having to have people to deal with them. So they created the 990N, and it's a real simple online, no cost form that you simply get on, tell them you're still there and you don't make more than $50,000, and who is filing the form. There's not a whole lot more than that to it. And so everybody that doesn't have a $50,000 problem should be filing the N, file the 990N. And it is, because it's real simple, you should be able to pass it along to your organizations so that the treasurer or the president or somebody has it in their notes whenever they change officers, that the next officer will know to do that. There's another nonprofit situation, which is the Secretary of State in your state. And you really should, your organization should be identified as a not-for-profit or a nonprofit corporation. And a value of that is that the officers are directly shielded from lawsuits. And an even better deal is that, at least it's my understanding, that if someone attempts to sue your club, you would, and you are incorporated when in your state, that the suer, is that a word? The person who is suing cannot ask you for your membership list. If you're not incorporated, and you have a membership list, they can go for any member of your organization and sue any one of them, which is pretty awful. So that's a reason to sue. That's a reason to be incorporated. And in fact, in Colorado, the bank, when we went to the bank to get a checking account, they required that we incorporate the organization, the USDA, in Colorado. Some people might think of it as registering it, but doesn't seem to be any difference there. So
Good, Jim.
yes.
Thank you. Yeah. So any other questions that we can help people with?
Jim, are you seeing Bob Granger's comments regarding their listing as non-exempt? They were non-exempt with the California Tax Board and had to file with them back taxes to bring them back to good standing. And he said they did do that with the IRS to get the exempt status restored. And now they are in good standing with both. But he also commented that they have to file with the State Attorney General's office as a charity. If not registered with them, could also become suspended with the State Tax Board. Bob, do you want to expand on that at all?
Sure. Yeah. So we just recently found out that there was a requirement to file as a charity nonprofit with the State Attorney General's office. We were not aware of that. So I contacted the State Attorney General's office. We had to submit a rather large package with them, which included 40 pages of documentation that was filed when our organization got their exempt status back with the IRS. The Attorney General's office wanted that whole package. It took about 4 months for them to process everything. We've just been notified that we have to file 5 years of back tax forms with the Attorney General's office, Department of Charities, in order to bring us back into good standing with them. It was something that our organization didn't know we needed to do. Just like when we became suspended with the Franchise Tax Board, we didn't know that we were suspended. It was through a haphazard check with the State Attorney, Secretary of State's office that we discovered that we were suspended with the Franchise Tax Board. So we had to jump through hoops to get all these things done. I've spent the last year or so trying to get all of this stuff back, bring us back into good standing. We're working on the State Attorney General's office right now, but these were unknown issues that we did not know about. I don't know why we didn't get notification at our mailing address. It's, things drop through the cracks, and we're trying to bring everything back. So we're back in good standing with all the organizations. Hopefully, once the State Attorney General's office packages are sent to them and okayed, we won't find any other missing entities that we need to register or file with. But yeah, this was an unknown to us. I've done a lot of documenting of what we have to do on a yearly basis for our organization, so that when and if I leave the club, I can turn this document over to the next group, so that they'll know on a yearly basis what they have to file, what they have to pay, what they have to do in order to maintain the club in good standing. And it's a pain, but it's something that needs to be done.
Yes,
just for
Bob,
clarification, Bob is from California. So
well,
yeah,
but there are others of us here that are from California. That's a horror story, Bob. And we would appreciate you sharing. If you've got that list of things we need to do, that would be very beneficial to the rest of us in California that need to start checking into. This is something I've never even heard of. And
yeah, we didn't know.
1,000 clubs that have done it.
Yeah, and again, we're a 501c4, but it doesn't really matter. The Attorney General's office, that was a complete unknown. I thought we were registered with everybody. We didn't have a state charity ID number with the Attorney General's office, so we had to get one of those. So yeah, it was a lengthy process and it's still ongoing, but I've got a document that I've put together, and Jim, I can go ahead and forward it to you so that you've got an idea as to what it is that we had to go through to get ourselves back in good standing and what the yearly requirements are for California.
That'd be terrific, Bob. And worst case, you can share it with Bonnie and she can get it to me. So we would definitely like to see that, because that's something that the rest of us in California need to know more about, and we just don't.
All right.
I'd love to see that
like
too.
Ah,
This
did you have a
Jim,
question?
this Jim Taylor, I'd like to know a little more about it because from the IRS's standpoint, the word charity applies to a 501c3 process. And you said you were a 4, so it sounds like the California per se has something different. What I'm hoping is that the reason you got involved in all of this and didn't hear about the fact that you were suspended is that if as a 501c4, you would have been required to file the 990. And if you failed to do that at any point in time, you, for 3 years, continuous, you would have lost your status just automatically with no knowledge, no information. And,
Well,
and that's
our-
what happened to a number of the clubs that we have made 501c3s, is that they had never filed a 990, and so they had lost their status and couldn't file a 990N. And the value of filing the N is that you do it every year, and so you know that you're in good shape. You know, it'll tell you you're responsible. Go ahead.
With our organization, originally, I believe we were a 501c3. I'm not sure at what point we became a 501c4. I don't know why. That was before my time. But our past treasurer discovered that we were suspended with the IRS, and he got us back into good standing with the IRS. He did not realize there was a filing requirement with the state of California. So we had never filed tax forms with the state of California. Once we discovered that in 2023, that's when I had to start going through the records and find everything that we did to bring us back into good standing with the IRS. And then I used that documentation to file with the Franchise Tax Board here in California in order to bring us back into good standing with them. And once that was done, I thought we were done and finished. Everything we've been filing, everything correctly. Now to come to find out this whole deal with the State Attorney General's office and Department of Charities with them is another thing we have to file on a yearly basis. And there's a $25 annual fee we have to pay to them. But it doesn't matter if it's a 501c3 or 501c4, we're a charity.
Bob, you somehow muted yourself.
I see that. I hit a key, didn't mean to. So anyways, yeah, the Attorney General's office was something new that we didn't realize we had a requirement for. So like I said, the IRS, we got back with good standing, but the treasurer had no idea that there was a state requirement to file taxes. Once we discovered that, I had to go back and file all the back taxes they required for them. I think it was 10 years of back taxes with the state of California. So we're getting all that taken care of, and it's eventually we'll be back in good standing with everybody, we hope.
Well, good job, Bob, and sounds like a heck of a lot of work. So, Pat, did you have a question? You're muted. Yeah. You're still muted, Pat. Did you have a question?
I was wondering if Bob could send me or make more available the information for California people, because I don't think we've got any of the state stuff.
Yeah, oh, we'll try to get it to you, Pat.
Yeah, well, because this is also like for Pace and for Interlock Stores.
Yeah, okay, good. Super. No, that's good information for some of us, not and bad information for some of us, perhaps, but appreciate that.
And thank you,
sharing
Bob.
it. Yeah, definitely. Anything further?
I am not seeing any other questions at this time. If anybody either has a question or you can either post it in the chat or unmute yourself one at a time and directly ask either of the gyms.
I'd like to ask Jim Masco if the statement that was on one of your emails that the IRS, when they accept the 501c3 status, that they would automatically fix whatever problems there were with. I read that into the statement. I don't remember the exact statement.
Yeah, we can only hope that they do that. We can't, that should be their job to do that, but like you say, they were backed up for a couple of years and maybe they've gotten more staffing and it's not quite so bad anymore, but USDA files an annual report with the IRS at the end of September, which we're preparing to do with about 15 new members or participants in the 501c3 program this past year. So it's become a popular program and we believe it to be very beneficial.
Another question just came up. Who do you go through first, the state or the federal, to get exempted or re-exempted?
Well, federal is probably almost the easiest, but that link that Jim Taylor provided is probably the best place to start. The state, it depends on how long your group's been around and whether they're incorporated. If they're incorporated, that's one thing. If they're not incorporated, they probably are not recognized by the state. So the requirement number one, if you're incorporated, and if you are, you probably do need to check with the state to see that your corporate status is active and that you haven't been deleted from their records.
Okay, Jim, another question from Rosie. Is the app for associate membership enough to get started, or do you also want the 501c3 at the same time?
Whatever works best for you. We can take them at the same time, or the associate membership is step one. And so that can come first and we can move forward with that. And then we'll take your 501c3 group or nonprofit application at a later date.
Okay,
Thank you.
I do have one more reason to file as an exempt, to become an exempt organization, whatever status of exempt. But there is another new law that came up just recently, and it has to do with beneficial ownership of an entity. And the federal government, in their wisdom, has decreed that any bank or financial institution that has clients that they're servicing, they send a form out to you from the federal government that requires you to identify who the stakeholders are in the corporation with at least 25% interest. But if that doesn't apply, which is mostly the case with square dancing, who is the one who is in charge of that organization? And they want a whole bunch of information, and you'd have to change it every time the office changes. And this is for fraud. They're trying to help the government figure out how to deal with fraud and so forth. And they're requiring every organization. Well, it turns out there's an exempt organizations are exempt from doing this. So another reason to become exempt.
Yeah. Good, Jen. Appreciate that extra insight perspective. Good.
Any other questions or comments for either of the gyms? Okay.
Bonnie, hold on. I just did want to remind everybody that we found out that we were suspended with the state of California by checking our status with the Secretary of State's office. So if you're a California organization, you might want to check with the Secretary of State's office. They will let you know whether or not you're suspended or not. But that's how we found out, is they're going through the Secretary of State's office. Because every year we're required to submit a statement of officers to the Secretary of State's office. And it was during that process that we discovered we were suspended.
Thank
Had
you for
you-
that,
Had
Bob.
you not been sending that every year?
We had been, but
Huh.
apparently the people who had submitted the statement of officers didn't scroll down or whatever to the page that showed what their active, what our entity's active status was.
Huh.
And it was we discovered it that way.
Huh.
And again, we didn't get notified by the state or the Secretary of State's office by letter or anything that we were suspended, so we did not know.
Okay. Any other questions that we have or comments, input? Thank you for that, Bob Granger. All that information is very helpful. Speaking of helpful information, this has been a good informative program. Don't forget to post your email address if you're interested in getting a packet from Jim to get you started on this process. I do want to tell you our next webinar will be Saturday, October 19th. It's on the USDA insurance program, and we want to make sure that your clubs and dancers are covered. Elizabeth Sanders, who is the USDA insurance director, will be doing that program for us. And we encourage you to have all of your state, area, and local insurance directors participate in that program. For those of you in California, our state insurance director is Nancy, is going to do, we're going to have people participate in the 11 a.m. main webinar. And then at 1 o'clock, we're going to come back. Nancy Shelton, our state insurance director, is going to address your individual questions. She's participated in Pat's or in Elizabeth's workshops before. And Nancy wants to go over some of the one-off questions she gets, the special arrangements, all of that. So we encourage you to tell all of your insurance chairman and anyone else who's interested to join us for that participation. Again, this session has been recorded. It will be posted to the USDA website early next week. Usually takes a day or so to get it over to Dan, and he'll get it posted, but that will be up and available for any of you. If you have people that missed the session, they'll be able to listen to it via that source. I want to thank Jim and Judy and Jim Masco, my favorite nemesis, for putting on this program for us today. I think it was a wonderful job, and we really do appreciate you continuing to be part of this webinar series program. I see a few more of you posting your email addresses for us. We'll be sure that the gyms have that to get that information out to you. One final time, I'm going to ask if there's any more questions or comments. All right, if nothing is said, I'm going to go ahead and end the webinar. Again, thank you all very much for joining us today, and please join us in the future. You can see the schedule. We've got most of the next year booked out, so you can see future webinars that are scheduled on the USDA website. That website is www.usda.org, and be sure you do the .org. Thank you all so much. Any last comments, Jim and Jim?
No, thank you. Appreciate everybody with their input. All been very, we've all learned something today, and that's the benefit of these things.
All right.
Thank you for holding this and moderating. Would you repeat the date of next webinar?
Yes, Saturday, October 19th.
Okay, thank you.
And the times remain the same. It's always 11 a.m. Pacific, in this case, Pacific Daylight Time. We're still on daylight time in the month of October. So whatever it is, according to your time zone, That's equivalent to 11 a.m. Pacific daylight. Thank you all very much, and you all have a great rest of your weekend and a great week coming up.
Thank you.
You're quite welcome. All right, where's mine?
So Jim and Judy, you'll be pleased to know that Jim Masco is headed off to round dance class. I'm becoming a round dancer as well as a square dancer. So,
Is that right?
yeah,
We're happy to hear that.
I knew you would be.
We have on the second weekend in October, we have, or is it